Welcome back to another episode of the Max Term Podcast. Kyle Stitcher alongside James Finch. And we're happy to be back with our contract projections extravaganza, we'll call it. We have released our contract projections for this summer. They are available on AFPanalytics.com. That includes all pending unrestricted free agents, pending restricted free agents, as well as players that as of July 1st can sign an extension with their current organization, or I guess if they were traded with a new organization. I don't know if that would necessarily occur, but anyways, that's all those are up afpanalytics.com. Content analysis available on X, Blue Sky, Threads at AFP Analytics. Max Stern Podcast, we appreciate you listening. Available on all major podcast platforms. And I think those are the big things. Contract projections we have all the same data that we have in the past. All live on the website. No more massive Google sheet. The only thing you might notice is if you just go to the website initially, some of the information we have displayed in the past, comparable players, and tax information is not available if you just go to the site. That's because we have added a premium, and I think premium is very loose here because the price is $3 a month or $28 for an entire year. And you can access all the content that we used to put out in addition to creating your own, generating your own graphics for use in articles, etc., as well as our max stat graphic data is also all there as well with a premium subscription, and that does go a long way to helping us continue to push forward, being able to host it on the website and also try to make us feel like we're profiting from our time, or at least be able to convince our wives that we're profiting from our time. So we do appreciate you supporting us, subscribing at AFP Analytics on X, or picking up a premium subscription on our website. So we're gonna preview, I guess, talk through our contract projections. Going to start with unrestricted free agents and then kind of see how the conversation goes. Each year we kind of divide up a little bit who tackles the UFAs, who tackles the RFAs. So I was responsible a little bit more for the unrestricted free agents this year. It feels like we're usually flipped. So I guess you have to direct your qualms to me if you don't like some of the projected values. So I think with that, let's get into some of these names. And I think the first observation, then I'll get out of the way for a little while, is this is a very, very thin class. And I think you could talk yourself into, or talk yourself maybe out of, a lot of these top contracts that we have projected if you're an organization. But at the same point, I think a lot of these top names are probably going to get or exceed the value that we've put out publicly as their market value rate.
Yeah, and part of that is honestly just because of how thin it is. We're coming up with these values based off of past contracts, past player performance, but with how thin the UFA class is, I would say certain positions more than others, it could definitely cause those values to be inflated a little bit. Not to mention the cap going up a lot more than it has been. Some GMs might have a little more of a willingness to reach into their pockets, spend a little extra money than they usually would. One of the things that I've kind of noticed just looking over the sheet, there's a handful of older names that I would say are likely to stay with certain teams that they're already on. Maybe not as much so as we would think in the past, but there's not much top end, high end depth Alex Tuck is kind of the one clear, we will say elite player, someone that can score 30 goals, put up 60 plus points, good two-way game generally. He's kind of most likely in a tier of his own. So our projection, 8 years at about $10.5 million. Obviously, 8 years would suggest Buffalo retaining him. If he hits the open market on July 1st, unrestricted free agency, he could sign for 7 with a different team. Well, and with the Sabres at that point. 10.5 is interesting. It's right about where I think we had him mid-season. Maybe we had him a touch higher. Alex Tuck's a weird one to kind of look at. And before we even get into the playoffs, whether they matter or not, and really just one series, Adrian Kempe for the Los Angeles Kings signed a deal, and that was very good for Alex Tuck. Then Nick Schmaltz signed his deal, and that was not good for Alex Tuck. So they're just two very recent comparables. One maybe being a little higher end, one on the lower end of Alex Tuck are kind of pulling them in different directions. Factor in now that he's kind of on his own, I would lean towards okay, maybe that higher recent comp in Kempe can pull him upwards a little bit. But then there's all this talk now because of how he pretty much, at least from a production standpoint and even a little bit defensively, was not himself in the Montreal series.
On Tuck, we debated and doing it, but we had gotten him to about 7 by 10. But if he does stay in Buffalo, it would not be shocking if that number does come in 9.5 to 10, maybe even a touch lower.
So that's the other thing that's I don't want to say it's difficult because I think we're usually aware of it, but we know all of everything that's being talked about around Alex Tuck. So we know what's going on with him performance wise, what's going on with the Sabres from a cap perspective, and whether we intend it to or not, that can kind of creep into our heads and say maybe this should be a little bit lower. We tried to kind of refrain from that a little bit and not let that have too much of an impact, and more so try and give a true look at here's what you could expect on the open market.
Yeah, and I think that's the key that it ultimately comes down to if he hits the open market, where's his value? I know he can't necessarily get 8 years. Well, who knows? Maybe they could work out something at the last minute where it's kind of a sign and trade to get him that 8th year elsewhere if it's clear that things aren't going to work out with Buffalo. We've seen that a couple times the past couple years, but yeah, it's hard to not put that as his open market value because I'm pretty confident there is at least one team out there that would give him at least that, if not more, if he was truly willing to entertain any and all offers on the table and sign the one that's for the most money. That's not necessarily how he's going to operate, but that's how we needed to reflect him ultimately in our projection.
Yep. And ultimately, from the perspective of unrestricted free agent forwards, he should pretty clearly still be the top forward signed from a cap hit perspective. We have Ovechkin kind of up just above 9 million, 9.1, 9.2 on a 1 year deal if he decides to return to Washington. From there, it drops quite a bit to the next forward, which is Evgeny Malkin. Again, a 1 year deal. We've got him at about 6.8. That's one where when I was kind of mentioning older players, seems like maybe they stay with their team, maybe a little less so there. Like he could very well stay in Pittsburgh, but maybe he leaves. So maybe he is a true unrestricted option.
Anders Lee
Anders Lee.
next.
So Lee signing in New York again is maybe up in the air a little bit. This might be kind of the true one that we could see hit free agency and kind of be that next option once Tuck is gone. Lee still being kind of the same player he's been, very good around the front of the net. A little bit older than Tuck. He'll be signing at age 35. Well, he might not. Well, yeah, age 35 and actually be turning 36 shortly after, most likely, on July 3rd. We've got him 3 years, 6.6 million. Very doable in this cap climate. That's honestly going to be kind of second or high end third line money very quickly here. So obviously we're jumping from Alex Tuck, who has kind of been a first line guy in Buffalo, down to Lee, who could still probably play on a first line, but is not necessarily going to have the same level of impact that he had, let's say, 5 years ago. Skipping down from there, we do have Kopitar on here. We know he's retiring. We did the projection anyways, just in case he decides not to. So he's likely off the board. From there, this is a guy who I think could look to really cash in this year because he's coming off a 30 plus goal season.
Yep.
Anthony Mantha was very good with Pittsburgh this year. 4 years at about 6.3, 6.4 per year. That's an interesting one to me because I think he had kind of shown in the past recently. I think when he went from Washington, where he was looking good, to Vegas, it wasn't the greatest fit. And then he went to Calgary, messed up his knee. So just kind of a turbulent middle of the career for him, but going to Pittsburgh seemed like a very good fit. So he could cash in. And honestly, if Tuck goes, he could be the one that benefits the most. He's not alone. There's a few other names here that would probably be viewed in the same tier. But
Yeah.
all it
I,
takes is a GM or two to get crazy and that value starts to bump up.
I think kind of what you've been highlighting is Ovechkin most likely back with the Capitals if he continues playing. Malkin more than likely back with Pittsburgh, not a certainty.
Yep.
Lee is probably 50-50, so maybe he could hit the open market. Kopitar, it's LA or most likely retiring.
Yeah, which we think he's done. He's
I
said
mean,
he's done.
he's given all indications. So basically, it could end up in a situation where Anthony Mantha is the top forward come July 1st.
Yeah.
It'll be very interesting how the market reacts to that possibility.
Yep. And so I kind of mentioned there's what I would call a group. He's somewhat clearly on his own in our projections, but we start to get to some names like Matt Zuccarello, 1 year 5.8. Michael Bunting, 4 years 5.8. Mason Marchment, 3 years about 5.7. I'm going to skip one name and go to Bobby McMahon, 4 years 5.3. So there's a lot of kind of those, I'll call them top nine wingers. You could probably have them in on any of the top three lines, just depending on the fit. All kind of in that mid five and a half, mid fives to six range, and Mantha being a touch higher. So I would say that is sort of good news to teams that there's a handful of those guys. It's just obviously we've kind of taken a step down from where Tuck is at the top. So there's kind of that prize possession up there and then some decent players.
I should point out we've been using a sheet here, and I realized that there are a few numbers that we did end up updating. Tuck, we did end up bumping down.
Oh, did
I
we?
didn't remember if we did end up doing that or not. So we end up bumping down Tuck 7 by 10. And then the
Okay.
next name that you were about to get to is what screamed out at me that we had made a few adjustments in a different sheet, kind of have like multiple tabs working here.
Uh,
So the next name is definitely the next tier down, and it was sticking out to me because Jason Dickinson, we end up discussing a little bit more, and I think a lot of people are going to think that we already have him too high. I had him even higher on the first go round, partly because he might be the top center available, which is crazy to say.
maybe. So what this has told me, us getting our numbers wrong already, is I'm just going to go to our wonderful AFPanalytics.com website. So before we even get to Dickinson, there is one name, one center, Boone
Y-
Jenner.
Yep.
Probably, and again, it's kind of talking through this with the point of view of kind of trying to tier these guys. I think Boone Jenner is probably viewed slightly above Dickinson, at least from an offensive standpoint. Kind of two different types of players. Like Boone Jenner can kind of play a heavier game, but I think Dickinson has hands down the better defensive play. He's a very good shutdown center. So you might kind of be looking at each player differently, and maybe some teams are interested in one and not the other. So Boone Jenner's a little higher in our projections at 3 years, 5.2. Dickinson is not too far under 4 years at about 5 million. That does seem rich. And this is one of the ones I kind of highlighted when we were going through. And I think we did try and change them a little bit here, but it's hard to get into your head. And by yours, I mean, it was hard for me even seeing it. I don't mean yours specifically. 5 million for a player like Dickinson who like maybe puts up 30 points and you're happy, but from a 3C with that defensive ability, that is what it should cost.
Yeah, I mean, you also look at age, 30 years old compared to Boone Jenner being 33
Yeah.
years old. Again, I'm not saying I probably in a vacuum take Boone. I shouldn't say probably. I would take Boone Jenner in a vacuum for next season instead of Dickinson. With that said, I could see, and you were kind of highlighting this, some teams talking them into Dickinson being the equal or better fit for their organization, depending
Yep.
on where they are timeline wise and maybe deployment wise a little bit, though. I think both are probably ideally playing third line minutes, but it's kind of how you want to utilize that third line
Yeah.
and as far as matchups and deployment and everything as to which of the two you might prefer.
Kind of sticking with centers. And this is where it gets thin. So I guess we should mention a little bit. Charlie Coyle signed already. So he
Yep.
was going to be the top center on the free agent market. Could be a big reason why he was able to get 6 by 6 with Columbus as a 34-year-old free agent. So we're going Boone Jenner, Jason Dickinson, Scott Lawton's the next true center on our list. 3 by about 4.1. He's an interesting one because I think overall the perception of him is down slightly, but not a ton. I don't think it's where it was at when the Flyers were looking to trade him initially. He's a serviceable third line center still, though.
I think there have been some narratives that he did help stabilize things in LA a little bit down the
Yeah.
stretch and was pretty decent in the playoffs. So when, yeah, I don't disagree that his value when the Leafs acquired him from Philadelphia was definitely higher than the year and a half he was on, I guess,
Yeah.
year he was on Toronto, but I think he did bump himself up a little bit at after being traded from Toronto.
Yes.
I won't take any cheap shots at Toronto right now.
Yeah. Well, and I'll finish the Scott Lawton thought with it seems like there is mutual interest there to try and keep him in LA. If that happens before free agency, we're just making this center list much more thin.
Yep.
Looking for the next center, Alexander Kerfoot, who again kind of a 3C type, has dealt with some injuries a little bit. We're coming down to three by about 3.4 with his projection. There's some other names kind of down here. Eric Howla, who was with Nashville this past season, 1 by 3.3 is our projection. One that has bothered me the past handful of years, because he's been good for Minnesota, is Marcus Johansson. Sometimes on the wing, so like it probably depends how a team views him. But like this season, he had a very good season, and it kind of had to bump his projection up. But he's been signing super low value deals with Minnesota. We've got him one by about 3.2, but again, that's just a difficult one. It wouldn't shock me if he signs with Minnesota again at a lower value, but if he were to hit the market, he should be right in this tier pretty easily.
Could even see a team look at what he's done in Minnesota and think, well, we need some of that and pay him 4 or 5 million for a year or two. Like I think a contract for him anywhere from 1 to 5 million
Yeah.
wouldn't be shocking.
And again, not to keep hammering this over and over again, but the free agent class is very thin. Next up on the list, we're starting to get the fourth line centers, Teddy Bluger. Let's see, David Kampf, Noel Chari. It's kind of a next tier where we're probably looking ideally fourth line centers. So, I mean, we didn't even name five centers who we would want in up higher in the lineup, playing like meaningful minutes. So, I mean, in a way, good for Columbus to get Coyle locked in at the same time. Like they kind of had to give some term there, I think, to make it happen. And yeah, these other guys could end up cashing in pretty well just due to it being super thin. Trade market for centers maybe heats up a little bit. I know that's kind of something we hear all the time. Just the trade market's going to be crazy and it doesn't end up being. But we'll see. Trade market or free agency, just with all extra money around, maybe things are a bit more fun this year there. Kind of going back to the wing a little bit since we shifted towards centers there. I mentioned there was kind of that group Mantha, Zuccarello, Bunting, Marchment, McCann. To me, it sort of like there's a slight drop, ever so slight to another couple names or maybe another few names. So there's Jaden Schwartz in Seattle, who is a little bit older now. He's going to be a 34-year-old free agent. 2 years, 4.75, which I want to say cap hit wise is pretty much what Eberle in Seattle signed. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of in that same group. Oh, I did skip a name. Sorry. Victor Arvidsson, we have 2 by 4.9. Had a very good year with Boston. Kind of a bit of a bounce back year. And then Jack Roslovic. I always mess his name up.
I think I've heard both ways there.
About 3 by 4.7. So that's kind of another little tier here of wingers who are Probably more clearly second or third line, probably not getting first line type of minutes, but kind of decent depth scoring from those three.
Ardvinson's interesting in that he I think was one of Boston's more impactful players in their series against Buffalo.
Yeah.
I think it was a big difference once he went out injured as far as just it was then Pasternak and everyone else. Whereas when he was in the lineup, he was giving Buffalo some trouble with some speed and just kind of play driving forward. With that said, he has dealt with injuries the past couple of years, which is why his projection comes in lower than maybe some of the others. But he could be someone that if you're looking for maybe a little bit of a buy low reclamation project, maybe that's where he's a name that maybe you can find some value with in this free agent class, opposed to a lot of the other ones. Not saying they can't outperform their contracts, but I think of all the forwards we've kind of named so far, that might be the best bet to outperform what he signs for.
Moving a little bit lower down the board here, we get to a name, which this could be a name to be careful with contract wise, but could also be a good bounce back candidate, Andrei Kuzmenko. 2 years at about 4 million. I don't think that's a deal that hurts anyone, regardless of the version of Kuzmenko that you get. That's kind of the safe deal, and I think that makes a lot of sense. If things start to get a little ridiculous in free agency and that number starts to increase to 4.5, even more like 5 million, that's where I think I'm out on a player like him. But what he's shown in the past from like a goal scoring perspective offensively, that's an interesting name for a team that just needs scoring. Maybe a team kind of trying to get out of the basement a little bit takes a chance on him. I think that's a good rebound candidate. Eli Tolvanen, Tolvanen. There's no I, so I'm going to say Tolvanen. I'm usually the guy correcting you, but I'm
I'm
not on
letting
my
it
game
cook.
tonight.
I'm letting it cook.
Has been with Seattle 2 years at about 3.6, 3.7 is our projection. He's an interesting one because in recent years, he looked like a very good third liner, a little bit of offense, and then some really good underlying metrics. And I believe this year it was not as strong.
Yeah, I don't think he was. I was anticipating going in when I first just saw the name on paper that I would need to be a lot higher than I was, and I mean
Yeah.
he's in the third, fourth tier of wingers at this point. Decent third line candidate, but
Someone I would wonder if he's even kind of viewed as like, okay, maybe we get him out of Seattle just because Seattle had a ultimately a not great year. Ilya Mikheyev, Chicago. This is an interesting one because he's been in the news lately.
yeah.
Pretty much Chicago has a what is said to be a big offer on the table, which is interesting. We've got him three by about 3.5. Chicago pretty much saying, go ahead right now, go try and find someone that'll give you more than that, and we'll trade you over there and let you. Which doesn't make a ton of sense to me, just in general how that works. But I'm interested to see where that deal comes in. He's usually a very good defensive winger. The offense comes and goes. I I don't know what to think of this big offer from Chicago, like them thinking you're not going to do better anywhere else. Makes me think he could end up coming in a bit higher than this, but we'll see.
Yeah, those reports definitely worry me, but yeah, he's been fine defensively, fine to good, but hasn't scored a ton. Will be 31 years old. Like, I don't know how much term you want to commit there. Has dealt with
Yeah.
some injuries the past couple of years. I and kind of never really worked out in Vancouver, has been fine in Chicago, but yeah, I don't know. Either we're about to be like way off, which is always possible, or his agent is very much misreading the market for him.
Yeah.
And I mean, both are possibilities, but I he could be an issue for our air when we end up calculating that.
Vander Kane, we'll see. We'll see who is willing to bring him in. He's still fairly serviceable offensively. And so we've got him kind of in the mid threes, 1 year, 3.4. There's some other names. We won't go too much further down the board, but Tarasenko, Patrick Kane's going to decide if he wants to stick with Detroit, go somewhere else.
Yeah, David
Yep.
Perron,
David
same
Perron. Yep.
situation. Like,
As we get further down the board from those guys, some of the veteran names, we start to see more clear fourth line guys. So Kasperi Kapanen with Edmonton. Bjorkstrand's an interesting one. That fit didn't seem great necessarily for
I
him in
think you're being
Tampa.
I think you're being generous there. That did not go well.
Yeah, it didn't.
His underlying metrics were horrendous. His
Yep.
box score statistics were not good. I was really looking to try to justify a 1 year deal. I couldn't justify it, but to me, he's a candidate for like a 1 year lower average annual
Yeah.
salary to some place where he's going to be able to maybe shine a little bit more and rebuild a little bit of his value. But we'll
Yep.
we'll see.
Yeah. Nick Foligno, let's see if he gets his Kaprizov deal in Minnesota. Greer, Michael Carcone, Beck Malenstein. We see maybe more of a specialist type guy like a Victor Olofsson. So we're starting to get kind of into lower in the lineup or guys who might get like 10 minutes at 5-on-5 and then it could be good on the power play
Or a penalty kill for like
or
a
penalty kill. Yep.
Malenstein.
So very much into the fourth line. So ultimately, we have talked a while on the forwards, but we haven't said that many great names. It's a bit thin, especially with all the money that's going to be available to be spent. Now there are restricted free agents. We'll get there. We'll touch on them. We still got to talk defensemen here.
Real quickly before we move on to defensemen, give me 1 to 3 forwards that if
Okay.
looking at our projections, assuming that we're spot on, because we're always spot on, which if you're have your GM hat on, give me like I'll give up to say up to 5 names that you would say those players at that contract, knowing the cap environment and everything, might not be bad ideas
Give me Anders Lee. I'll try and give you a name like kind of up
in
and down the
each tier.
lineup
Yep.
here. So Lee, let me pick a center here. So I'll say Dickinson. I want the shutdown center. 5 million is kind of a premium there, but he's from a defensive shutdown center standpoint, he's elite. Give me, I'll say Marcus Johansson because he's kind of a tier down the board. I would be willing to pay him even a little more than the one by 3.2 to get him out of Minnesota. Then I will say Bjorkstrand as kind of my reclamation project, change of scenery. That would be the guy I think I would target, especially at that dollar figure. Maybe it's more of a 1 by 3 instead of 2 by 2.8. We'll see. And fourth line, I will pay. we'll call it a premium for one of the higher fourth line guys on here. I would pay to get Beck Malenstein out of Buffalo, or if I'm Buffalo, to keep him. Because I mean, you watch it in the playoffs. It's a motor that just doesn't stop. Great on the penalty kill, block shots, just diving all over the place trying to stop shots. So that's that's your traditional fourth liner that gets paid a lot of money because that's the type of player teams need in the playoffs. So I guess that's kind of my forward options that I'd be happy with at this dollar figure.
Fully agree on. I don't think any of those are bad answers. I'll pick Lee as well. I will pick. I like Art Vincent as an idea at that price. There's a little injury risk there, but I like
Yeah.
what I saw from him in Boston. McMahon's interesting rate at about a little bit over 5 million a year. He's got enough versatility where you probably can feel okay paying that and then slotting him into different spots. And then a little bit lower in the lineup, I like Cole Smith. I'll give you
Yeah.
him instead of Beck Malenstein. Similar come should come in just a touch below Malenstein, but similar level of impact that he's bringing to your team. So I think that would be my other low guy. And another one that had an shockingly good season is Nick Cousins. I would consider the price. He's someone I've never been a big fan of for a variety of reasons. But this past year in Ottawa, he didn't get suspended and he had tremendous impact, actually playing up in the lineup at times too. He could be an interesting kind of I I think projection end up about 2 by 2 for him. He could be someone that outperforms that contract if the team finds him a good fit like in their lineup. So I'll go there to vary it up a little bit, but I don't
Okay.
disagree with any of the names that you had also said.
Cole
Kuzmenko
Smith
could
one
be an
is
Kuzmenko could be another interesting, as you
yeah.
kind of highlighted earlier too.
Cole Smith, good fourth line pick for sure. Moving to the defensive side of the game, defenseman. Something that I think as far as this free agent class that sticks out to me as a positive, you need a right shot defenseman. It's a pretty good offseason. Rasmus Anderson is right at the top for us, but he's not alone, I would say. So Anderson, we've got 6 years at about 8.75. There is a little bit of a drop to the next guy, but not much. So Darren Radish had himself a year. Now he was quietly having solid seasons. I think 2 seasons prior have been pretty good, but not not to the point this season was. Clear power play guy. We've got him six at about 8 million even. That's going to be an interesting one because if he's a guy that wants to stick around with the Lightning, maybe he takes a bit of a deal there and it comes down 500K, a million. Maybe we're looking more at a $7 million deal. We'll see, but this is this is maybe like poor man's unrestricted free agent scenario, Sam Reinhart. It's just this year, it's Darren Radish. A little bit lower in value, but one of the better players at the position.
Yeah, I even if he stays in Tampa, I could see that number coming in even below 7, maybe
Yeah, I mean,
quite a bit
would
below
like
7.
8 years, 6 million be shocking?
Yeah,
I don't think
no,
so.
no, it gives
Um,
him the same total value.
yeah. So we'll see. He could certainly go elsewhere. I mean, there's teams, we don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of matchmaking, but a team that's out there like San Jose who has a ton of money to spend and absolutely needs defensemen, like any of these names we're about to mention. Like there's going to be plenty of suitors for good right shot defensemen. So there's Anderson, there's Radish, there's John Carlson, who traded from Washington to Anaheim. So pretty quickly there, we knew that from our midseason projection, which was pretty much factoring in, okay, this would be with Washington right now. It was a bit lower. I think maybe he would take a little bit less to go there. Goes to Anaheim, still looks really good. 3 years, 7 million is what we have him at. He'll be a 36-year-old unrestricted free agent. That's an interesting one because I think the cup experience is just a veteran leader known to have the leadership, and he's still playing at a very high level. That's kind of a fun one to be out there, and I would like to see Anaheim keep him, but we'll see. From there, we're dropping down the board
A little bit.
a
Another
little
veteran
bit
from Anaheim,
from Anaheim. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped
Jacob
him.
Trouba. Yeah,
Jacob Trouba, 4 years, 6.4
yeah.
is our projection. Honestly, once he went from New York and kind of some of the noise around him died down, and now he's in Anaheim, he looked better.
Probably playing a
Not,
slightly more appropriate role in
yes,
Anaheim for him as himself as well.
yep. And he's not necessarily the same offensive guy that he was, but he's been very serviceable for Anaheim. So 4 by 6.4. I mean, you throw him on your second pair, you're happy. Or you have like a franchise guy as your number one, he could potentially pair as his partner. Now is kind of the drop a little bit down the board, not too far, but John Klingberg, 2 years at about 5.2. So that's one I'm curious to see if San Jose decides to keep him or give him an offer at least. As we've kind of come to expect with Klingberg, pretty solid offensively for you, and the defensive game is not going to be great.
I think he was at least more serviceable defensively this past year in San Jose.
Okay.
Not maybe the highest bar to clear, but I bel
Yeah.
if I remember, I think you would be okay if you're getting the offense with the level of impact that he had defensively. Or maybe his defensive numbers look good because relatively they are good considering who else was on San Jose this past year.
Very true.
Uh, uh Looking at it, they're okay. They're still rough. I think a little bit better, and on San Jose, they're not like terrible.
I'm going to stick with right shots here. Andrew Peak, Boston, 4 years, about 4.1. Fringe, second, third pair, and more of a PK guy. Next name is a very interesting one, in my opinion. Nick Blankenberg, kind of the opposite a little bit. 2 years at about 4.1. Thought he was a great pickup for Colorado as kind of just an extra guy in case they have injuries. Pretty good offensively, kind of the same skill set as a Sam Malinsky. Don't think he's going to get quite the same payday. He is a little bit smaller and is considered a small defenseman, which in today's NHL is, unless you're absolutely elite, you're probably signing a deal that is a little bit discounted in comparison to your performance.
Yeah, it'll be so he hasn't been playing a ton in the playoffs with Colorado,
Yeah,
but looking at how teams have had success in the playoffs in general, his skill set could be attractive to some organizations. You look at especially how Buffalo and Montreal's defensemen lead their offense. someone looking to replicate that could look at Blankenberg and be like, that's who we need.
I mean, Colorado kind of acquired him as this depth piece, and it seemed very obvious to me. Okay, you have Makar and you have Malinsky, and even kind of, I mean, Burns doesn't play to the same level he used to, but this offensive minded right side of your defense, Blankenberg was kind of the backup option. Like, okay, trade deadline, let's fill up our depth here. So yeah, another team could very much look to do that. Connor Murphy was a deadline acquisition for Edmonton. Solid defensive guy, veteran, probably third pair, but if he's kind of the fourth guy in your top four, okay. We've got him 2 years at about 3.6. Nick Jensen's out there, didn't have that great of a year, has dealt with injuries recently. We've got him 2 by 3.3. He's a right shot defenseman. He's probably going to get some money, but that's also one as a team you might want to plan like that's a third pair guy at this point.
Yeah, ever since he was traded to Ottawa, hasn't been as good. So if you're a team that wants to talk yourself into it, I think you probably could. And even at that price, if he's fourth, fifth, sixth on your depth chart, you're probably okay at that price as long as you're not committing a ton of term to him. And worst case, it doesn't work out for a couple years, but he's not going to cripple your cap by any means.
I'm going to mention Timothy Liljegren is how we decided he is pronouncing it. I
Yeah,
think it
that's according
used
to
to
Hockey
be,
Reference.
yeah, it used to be people saying Liljegren at one point, but they have Liljegren. So that's what we're going with. He's off the market.
Yep.
Re-signed with Washington 3 by 3.25, which is pretty much exactly what we had.
Yeah,
Or
I'll be
sorry,
back.
two by 3.25.
Yeah, yeah. Our actual projection was 2 by 3.2427. I'll be better next time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
we'll see. It's the first one. Gotta.
yeah. It- so I will say real quick, Patterson was a little bit, but also it is a I'm optimistic with him coming in there because that kind of sets seemingly should set a nice baseline for a lot of these guys that you just mentioned.
Yeah,
They should fall in ahead of him. Like Nick Jensen should come in right around him. There's really no reason. I know Lil Jagrin's younger, but like Nick Jensen, similar
yeah.
situation, should come in very similar contract wise. So yes, it's nice to be right on the first one, but more importantly, big picture, kind of reading where that market is good for kind of the overall projection. So yeah, I'd love to take a victory lap for being dead on there, but it's really it's a good indicator that we might have read the market kind of properly as far as some of these guys go because there's a lot of guys as you've been highlighting that come in right at around this same value, same skill set, same role.
Yep.
So kind of getting a baseline in early is should bode well for where the market does end up.
Just gonna rattle off some other right shots, not even really mention the projection. You can find them on our website just to give you an idea of the depth. Trevor Van Riemsdyk, Tony D'Angelo, Radko Gudas, Vincent Desharnais. We starting to get to clear like third line, maybe even extra names, but you get your Connor Clifton, Eric Goodbranson, Alex Petrovic with Dallas, Troy Stetcher, Zach Bogosian. So like there's a lot of right shots kind of if you need the higher end Anderson, Radish, Carlson, but as you go down the defensive lineup, there are options if you need a right shot. Left shots, little different. I think it's lacking the high end. There isn't an Anderson, a Radish, a Carlson, Our top left shot name is Mario Ferraro with San Jose. This has always been an interesting one to me. I, so you mentioned you pretty much did the UFAs. Mid-season, I had done them, and you had done the RFAs. We kind of flipped on purpose here, but that was one at that point in time. It was a little difficult for me to get that number up because San Jose defensively has not been good, and he's been kind of the consistent piece on that defense the past few years.
Yeah, he's someone that that seemingly a lot of positive smoke was around for a while,
Yeah.
but never ended up necessarily getting traded, never got a new deal. So you kind of wonder. So the narrative around him has always been positive, but you kind of wonder where the actual marketplace is going to view him because of that. I mean, San Jose had should have had an opportunity to move him last year. Maybe the fact that they were a little bit closer to the playoffs than expected hindered that a little bit, but the last 2 years, the fact he's still with the organization when they kind of tried to tear things down and get younger assets, he should have been a piece to go out, but maybe the market wasn't valuing him where they thought he should be. So I'm very interested to see where he ends up because I could see a team talking themselves into him playing a much higher role in their line, thinking he could play a much higher role in their lineup, or looking at the actual metrics that he had and not being optimistic with what they saw.
Screams Seattle to me.
Oh God.
And I don't think he really fits there, but like just lineup wise. But anyways, Ryan Shea is next. Kind of a decent, all of a sudden he's arrived in the NHL. Good for him. 4 years at about 4.4 is our projection. Likely second pair guy, kind of that number four. Another player, this was one or you had initially ran and we said, he's going to need a little bit of a bump. Brett Kulak. This was an interesting one when he went from Edmonton to Pittsburgh in the middle of the year in that trade. It was kind of like, okay, that's what they had to do to make the money work, but why are you just giving him up? He was having a little bit of a down year at that point, but traditionally he's been a very good defensive defenseman. Started to look better in Pittsburgh. Colorado goes and gets him, and he's playing that shutdown defensive role for Colorado and playing it well. We've got him 3 years at about 4.1, kind of right in the middle. That's going to be an interesting one. I think, depending on how the rest of this playoffs goes, if he is clearly playing well in that shutdown role, it wouldn't shock me if that goes up a little bit with how much money there is to spend this offseason.
He also is someone that, depending on how the season turns out, he's been close to winning a Stanley Cup multiple times.
Yeah,
Maybe he's gotten so close that maybe he's willing to take a little less money
that's true.
to be able to get over the finish line. So we'll see we'll see what happens the
Oh
rest of
yeah,
this postseason. But if that could dictate kind of his willingness to take a certain deal, maybe desire to stay in Colorado too. Who knows? But yeah, he could go multitude of ways, but you also know what you're going to get offensively from him, so you know where the ceiling is, but you also know where the floor is, how much teams are willing to pay for that low ceiling, high floor, but
yeah.
somewhat limited minutes. I mean, he's still, but definitely bottom of the lineup type player. There's value there, but it'll be interesting to see if he's someone that teams are willing to spend a little bit more on than we did ultimately project. And him versus Ferraro will be a very interesting kind of
Yeah.
see where they end up because you could talk yourself. I think teams could talk themselves into both, but Ferraro's a lot younger. So
There's a next tier of left shot defensemen. Gonna rattle off four names. Jeremy Lauzon with
Was on.
Vegas,
Yep.
Ian Cole, Utah, Jamie Alexiak with Seattle, and Logan Stanley with Buffalo. Pretty much other than Cole being a 1 year, they're all kind of 2 years. Lauzon 3 years, and all kind of in the 3 to 3.1 range.
Yep. All big and hit.
All big and hit. That is true.
Cole a
Um,
little bit different, but
yeah, not quite as much there, but yeah, so that's kind of your better third line options. There's things in some of their games that might caution teams a little bit, but they're all likely to be viewed within the same tier.
and Stanley want to point out it was no it the exact injury wasn't noted in the end of season press conference, but he was someone that ended up out of the lineup at the end of, during
Yeah,
most of the Montreal series for Buffalo. Jarmo Kekalainen, the GM for the Sabres, came out and said that he was dealing with something pretty serious. So people were speculating as serious as potentially a broken leg or something. He was pretty good. He was very good against Boston, in my opinion.
yeah,
Came out a little bit at the end of the regular season. The Montreal series was terrible for him, and everyone knew that. It'll be interesting to see how his value ends up lining up because there he was trending in a direction where I think he maybe would have been projected higher, and then injury happened. Whether teams are going to look at the injury or be it'll be interesting to see because Sabres gave up a pretty not an outrageous price, but a pretty decent price at the deadline to acquire him, and sometimes that's indicative of where his value is in the open market. But at the same point, people are also thinking maybe he would get a first round pick, and Buffalo did not give up a first round pick for him. So
yeah,
we'll see there. The other ones should come in right here, if not a touch lower.
yeah. And then kind of more clear third line or depth names. You get your Carson Soucy, Matt Griezlick, Ben Hutton, Jake Bean, Mike Riley. You want a veteran, Nick Leddy. Like there's more, but we don't have to go through all of those defensemen. So kind of a similar picture with the left shots and the right shots. It's just the left shots are missing the higher end players,
Yeah.
the Anderson, Radish, Carlson type of players. And then that pretty much, do you want to do a little quick?
So yeah, I think same question. Give me a few names that you like.
Yeah,
You put your GM hat on, you're okay paying this value to.
I'm all in on Carlson.
Yep.
That's kind of my high end option. In the middle right shot, I'm going to go with Blankenberg. Very much depends on the type of defenseman you are looking for, but I like Blankenberg. If you want me to pick sort of a middle, more defensive guy, I would be cool with Connor Murphy as kind of a veteran, more of a shutdown guy. And then if I'm looking kind of down the board for a defenseman, Ben Hutton's been kind of decent for Vegas. Good as kind of the in and out of the lineup, sixth or seventh guy. That would be an interesting one. So that's who I'll kind of go as my more bottom of the lineup defenseman.
Fully agree on Carlson, but I'll also throw out I think Jacob Trouba, if you can have him at the projection price, I think should be pretty good. Length would be the concern there, but again, you get him kind of what we're projecting. I think you're good. I'd be concerned giving him much more term than that. Kulak, I think, is a pretty safe name to say, so I'll say Brett Kulak. You know what you're going to get there, and then further down the lineup, I might roll the dice on Troy Stetcher. I think
Yeah.
he was very good when he came over to Toronto. Injuries, And I think if this class was weaker, he ends up with a higher projection. But there's so many names in front of him that I think it's going to be tough for him to kind of capitalize. I think it's just bad timing for him right now because he's coming off a very good year, but the there's just so many options available that he's probably not going to get a massive payday here.
And then to finish up the unrestricted free agents, this is going to be a quick overview of the goalies.
Yeah, I think we've went way long anyways, so
Yeah, and if you've been listening to us for a while, you have kind of known goalie free agency, unrestricted free agency in recent years has just not been good. Sergei Bobrovsky is our top projection, 2 years at about 5.6. This is one I would not do. He did not have a good year this year, 37 years old, but he's one of maybe three or four you could sort of talk yourself into playing more time. Stuart Skinner's going to be a free agent. Maybe a touch better with Pittsburgh, but also I believe, lost the net in the playoffs, which is not going to really help his ultimately probably his free agency. Just with how things went in Edmonton, and then ultimately did not finish the season as their top guy. I'm pretty sure Shelovs was in there.
yeah. Oh no, you're 100% right. I kind of just wanted to. I was pulling up his save percentage and stuff because
Yeah.
yes, he lost the net. Yes, she lost one in. I don't know if I would necessarily put that fully on Skinner's performance because Pittsburgh in front of him for the first few
Yeah.
games was not playing good hockey in front of him.
Yes.
I like I'm not saying that
Well,
I'd
so
be all in as a team on being Stuart Skinner, but I don't I well, I'll let you get through the list, I guess, and then we can
he's
go back.
a 27-year-old unrestricted free agent. We've got him 2 years, 4.4. That's
Yeah.
very much a tandem contract. Um, and if you don't have a clear number one goalie, like that's the bet to make an unrestricted free agency
Yeah.
this year.
He I'm not saying he's phenomenal, but he's definitely I think he's the best option available.
Yeah.
And I think reputation hurts him. I think his a poor reputation exceeds him being actually a decently average goalie. I know that
Like,
I'm setting the bar low, but
well, if you have them in a tandem, you're probably okay.
yeah,
I think just things snowballed a bit in Edmonton. Like it really did. Like that got out of hand. Um, so yeah, he's probably the best option here. Speaking of Edmonton, Connor Ingram's an unrestricted free agent. Another goalie that could be a solid, he's more 1B if he's in a tandem, or a solid clear backup, two by about 3 million. Freddie Anderson, I would expect he probably stays in Carolina. We'll see. I guess you never know, but we've got him one by 2.8.
I will just point out there they also do have Kachikov under contract, or at least, or is he up for restricted? I forget where
I
he's at,
did
but
a projection for him. It might have been an
yeah.
extension one.
Regardless, he's still under team control, and they just re-signed Brandon Busey to what 3 year
Yeah,
contract at a pretty low cap hit.
it wouldn't at all,
Well,
especially with Anderson's history. It would
yeah.
not shock me if they carried the three of them.
Oh yeah, but it's not a certainty. I mean, it's also not a
Right.
certainty that he's back playing hockey next year too. He is
Yeah.
38 years,
Could win a cup and
36 years old, I guess.
yeah. So I mean, Freddie Anderson's there. Cam Talbot did not have a good season this year. We've got him one by 1.8. We'll round up. David Rittich, New York Islanders. He actually did have a solid season as their backup. 2 years at about 1.6, 1.65. That could be an interesting option if you're a team needing just a clear backup goalie. He's kind of settled into that role in recent years. Tarasov, Comrie, Vanacek, Picard.
Brossois.
Is Brossois out there?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, he is there. He's a little lower. Mrazek got hurt. He'll be out there. Phoenix Copley has tried to battle back from, I believe he was an ACL injury. I
There's
think
something with his knee.
ACL or maybe a hip.
Yeah.
I want to say it was ACL. So like you kind of have some different options out there. Jonathan Quick has retired. James Reimer, if he wants to keep going. Ultimately, a very thin UFA goalie market. If you need a clear starter, someone you're hoping is improving your team, talk yourself into name recognition with Bobrovsky. Maybe you get Stuart Skinner to just take a breath, find a new spot with a decent contract, and he rebounds. That's probably your best bet.
Low pressure too,
Yep.
potentially, depending on what organization. Okay, so I think we'll wrap up with the goalies because this episode's went plenty long for our
Yeah.
listeners. Give me the Dan Vladar award, the one that you post a reply on for the signing that says this is clear backup money, and then the fans of that team six 6 months later come back saying that how wrong we were or wanting to get us and call us out for it. So, who's the Dan Vladar award of the goalies this year?
Okay, I'm talking myself into a little bit of a story here. Daniil Tarasov. So we've got him 2 years at about 1.6. He was Bobrovsky's backup this year. Florida. Now, I don't know exactly how this works, but Zito was with Columbus. Tarasov was with Columbus. I don't know if he would have been there for him being drafted. I'm thinking it lines up.
Should.
Um, they so Florida traded for Tarasov, pretty much identified him. You're going to be our backup this year. Okay. As a whole, Florida did not have a good season. Barkov messes up his knee. Everything just across the board down. Did okay, there's a reason Florida was comfortable trading for Tarasov to back up Bobrovsky. I'll give him that. Then everything went wrong for Florida. Did okay, Tarasov didn't really have a good year, but was he dealt a fair hand? Probably not. So he's kind of the I guess I'll call it the dark horse if I'm really desperate to find something in free agency. Like I know what Rittich is at this point. I know Cam Talbot at this point. If I'm trying to strike gold, like pretty much that's what we can call Vladar with the Flyers because he was not playing to this level with Calgary. It would be Tarasov. That's where I'm going.
I think that's probably the correct answer. I think Rittich is the one that could potentially blow up in our replies again by saying that he has been a career clear career backup and overpaying him is probably not a smart idea. But Tarasov, interestingly, was one I had almost highlighted thinking we might be a touch low on. But I went before kind of bringing it up to you. I went and looked at kind of the comps and everything and say I can't justify making him higher, so I'm not gonna bring it up as an art like as one to look and debate a little bit more. But he was like first glance, I'm like, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets a higher contract than that.
He was a very weird one because the expectation just of the team You would have thought the team would have been better. You would have thought the goalie's numbers across the board would have looked a little better. So like that's why I highlight him as maybe there's something there. So maybe there is a team that says, you know what, our goalies currently are terrible. There's not many options out here that we don't already know what they are. Do we know what Tarasov is at this point? He's 27. He was pretty much a backup in Columbus. He was with Florida this season. Maybe we can give him a little bit more and see how he handles it.
Well, that means he can't win the Dan Vladar award though, because you're not going to post that he's a clear backup. So,
Well, hang on. I will say that he was a clear backup so far throughout his career, and his
anyways,
performance would lead us to say he should be paid like a backup. But anyways,
yeah. So basically, to wrap this episode up, what we're trying to accomplish with these projections is not necessarily how they're going to do once they're signed. We're trying to capture their market value at the time of their signing. You did a good job putting an article up kind of outlining that. I made sure to add a little blurb to that to emphasize this exact thing is our process is getting up to the time of signing and then evaluating how teams and agents have done relative to our value, trying to figure out, did we misread the market or is it an overpay at the time? We hope that every single player outperforms their contract and gets paid and can get paid more on the next one. You should see our projection for Vladar's extension. It's a lot more.
which
We're
let me just
glad of
say
that.
really quick, I'm gonna butt in here.
Yeah.
The talk on Flyers Twitter about Vladar's extension and what it could look like, all I've seen is fans like, hang on a minute, he's only had one good year.
Yeah. Huh.
We don't want to
Interesting.
pay him five and a half, $6 million. It's
Looks
like,
like when I get bored, I'll go through some replies
yeah.
and see how some people are handling those reports. Anyways,
Anyways, yeah, continue.
so it's going what we're really trying to accomplish is just capturing at the moment that they sign, capturing their market value. Some we're going to be off on for various reasons, and and a lot of times we can kind of rationalize like, oh, they looked at these comps that were in our list, but we also thought these other ones were relevant. That's a miss on our end, but we can get there. The Vladar one, for example, we were low. Other reputable people who do the contract projections all had a similar value. I went back and kind of looked at that. All had similar contracts that we had. So we weren't necessarily missing anything. It's the Flyers identified something and made sure they secured their goalie. It's kind of counter to the Moneyball approach is they Moneyballed it correctly and identified traits that could outperform expectations, but then they went and paid more for that. Kind of the thing I was joking
Yeah.
about with you immediately. It's like if you're going to a restaurant and you order a hamburger, you're not you're not expecting to pay ribeye prices.
Yeah.
You're not going to care if that's the best hamburger of your life, and then you sit down and enjoy it, and at the end of the meal, you're like, "Yeah, I'm okay that I paid a price of ribeye for that hamburger. You still got a hamburger." That
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to capture is what the price of the burger should be on the menu, not what it is at the end of the meal. Basically, that's my analogy that I'm going to go with.
Okay.
So that's kind of the goal of our projections and whether we'll I mean again we'll say we're right or wrong at the time, but yeah, kind of looking at how they age, it's whatever. It doesn't really matter to us. I mean, it does, but we're more curious how the contracts age to if we can learn anything about them at the moment they were signed than how the players necessarily performed afterwards.
Talking about Anderson winning a cup, I'm looking at my phone and
As we
there's
finish up recording,
there's 8 minutes left in game one of Montreal, Carolina, and it's so, or sorry, 8 minutes left in the first period. It's 4-1 Montreal.
As we finish recording this. Yeah.
Sorry, Freddie Anderson.
Yeah. Jeez.
Although I'm thinking most of that happened probably before I mentioned him winning a cup.
Well, that's probably the fact that the Carolina Hurricanes haven't played for 11 days. So, anyways, I think we'll wrap this episode there. It's more than long enough. We appreciate you listening. Max Term Podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Content, including contract projections, available on afpanalytics.com. Handle on X, Threads, Blue Sky. Appreciate you subscribing to either us on social media, X, or purchasing a subscription on afpanalytics.com. We'll continue to be hopefully getting back regular podcast recording and posting on contracts. We'll probably talk. Yeah, definitely have to do an RFA, probably an extension. Last year we did what we thought would kind of be a fun episode, but a lot of people really liked the kind of matchmaker episode where each player will be matched with a new team. No one can resign, no one can be reused. So that we're already starting to toil around with working that puzzle out. So appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you next time.